Got word in real time. Some receipts were sent to us. We did promise the girl that we would give her anonymity. He knows who she is because he blocked her today. Put up the block receipt, Jess. That was fast. And, she got her receipts before. I asked her to send a screenshot of the DMs, and she did that. So let me pull up mine. So the voice note, we got him. Give me 1 second. He goes in the next text, like real bad.
So let's get into exactly what happened, who said what, and why fans were left absolutely stunned by how this all played out. For those of you who've been following the Braxton family over the years, Tamar is the youngest of the famous Braxton sisters. She's a Grammy-nominated singer, a reality TV star, and someone who has never been afraid to speak her mind. She co-hosted the daytime talk show, The Real, until she was fired in May 2016, and she's been a fixture on the family's reality series Braxton Family Values for years. Her personal life has been just as eventful as her career. Tamar married music executive Vincent Herbert in November 2008. Vincent, for those who don't remember, was a major player in the music industry. He worked with artists like Lady Gaga and Destiny's Child. He and Tamar had their own spin-off show called Tamar and Vince, and together they have a son named Logan. But the marriage hit serious trouble. There was a Christmas Day 2017 incident where Herbert was arrested for spousal assault, though it was later clarified as verbal only.
I have always minded the business that paid me. That's why every time I see Mendices out with...
Started putting you two together. Do you and Mendices have anything beyond this film? Or?
No, to be honest, I barely even know him.
Okay.
to be honest, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're not we're cool, but he's not like my homie. You know what I mean? It's not like that. And he just got casted in the film.
By July 2019, their divorce was finalized. So when Tamar started dating David Adefeso in 2018, she was still technically married to Vincent, though clearly their relationship was on the rocks. David Adefeso is a financial advisor and investment manager. He and Tamar seemed happy together. They appeared on her reality show, posted loving photos on social media, and by all appearances, they were building a life together. But what happened in July 2020 would change everything and expose just how complicated their relationship really was. On the night of July 16, 2020, David Adefeso found Tamar Braxton unresponsive at the Ritz-Carlton residences in downtown Los Angeles. It was around 9:45 p.m. He immediately called 911, and this is where the controversy begins. During that emergency call,
Saturday night, we went to the Roof Chris, we ate, we had a good time. She was like, let's turn up for your birthday. We went down to the V12, shouts out to Vinny and all the people at V12. That's the video y'all saw, or whatever, with us walking in, them making a whole lot of noise. We left there, we all got in the car together. The car dropped us off at Tamar house. I didn't go upstairs. I went to my car. I went and met James Knox at BJ Rooster,
which was later obtained and published by TMZ. Adefeso told the dispatcher specific details about Tamar's condition. He said, and I'm quoting here, "She's been drinking and she's on medication for depression. I don't know how much." He also mentioned that she had taken an unknown amount of prescription pills. Now, in a vacuum, you might say he was just trying to help the paramedics understand what they were dealing with. That's a fair point, but here's what made this different. That 911 call became public. TMZ published it, and suddenly millions of people knew that Tamar Braxton was on medication for depression. That was information she had never publicly disclosed before. But it didn't stop there. About a week later, on July 23rd, 2020, while Tamar was still hospitalized and receiving treatment, David Adefeso released a formal public statement to The Blast. In that statement, he declared that Tamar was, quote, navigating professional and personal struggles, including her battle with depression.
I had a text message from Tamar at 10 in the morning that said, "Can you give me Dr. Heavenly phone number?" I didn't think anything of it because people ask me for Dr. Heavenly phone number all the time. And it's typically when people have an emergency veneer situation, I did not think anything of it. People ask me for her number all the time. And then the next thing I know, folks is sending me this thing on the internet where the lady said she almost died and she was laying.
And that she was receiving mental health treatment. Here's where the family's anger comes in. According to the blast, Braxton's family claimed she was notified that David was releasing public statements about her current medical state without her consent. Let me repeat that, without her consent. She was in a hospital bed, recovering from a mental health crisis, and her boyfriend was giving interviews and releasing statements about her diagnosis and treatment to the press. The family wasn't just upset, they were furious. Sources told TMZ that the Braxton family was baffled and disturbed by David's actions. But what really set them off was what he said during that 911 call beyond the medical information. He apparently mentioned Tamar's issues with the WETV network during what should have been a straightforward emergency call. The family felt this was completely inappropriate. According to those same sources, the family believed David had too much influence over Tamar and her emotions. They used the word controlling to describe how they saw his behavior. And then Toni Braxton got involved. Toni, for those who don't know, is Tamar's oldest sister and arguably the most famous member of the family. She's a multiple Grammy winner with hits like Unbreak My Heart and Breathe Again. When Toni speaks, people listen. And what she had to say about David Adefeso was not kind. Toni went on social media and called David a weasel. She called him a ferret.
You gonna sit up in my face? You gonna sit up in my face with your 3 faces and tell me that you and Mendices did not have a conversation at that table in Roof Chris about him putting out a statement about him and Yandy not being together no more? We really gonna do that? And he said he did a version of the letter on Chat GPT. And then you started laughing back and was like, no, you gotta go back and rewrite it to kind of make it sound like it's you. We gonna say that didn't happen?
She declared him beyond contempt. These were not subtle criticisms. This was a direct public attack on her sister's boyfriend. The other Braxton sisters also weighed in, though more carefully. Tawanda, Trina, and Tracy all shared prayers for the family on Instagram during Tamar's hospitalization. Tracy later appeared on Instagram Live and admitted she didn't know all the details of what had transpired, but the message from the family was clear. They did not trust David Adefeso. And then there's Vincent Herbert. Remember, this is Tamar's actual ex-husband, the father of her son Logan. You might think he'd stay out of it. He and Tamar were divorced. He had his own issues to deal with, but he didn't stay silent. In September 2020, alleged text messages between Vincent Herbert and David Adefeso were leaked to the Shade Room. In those messages, Herbert made his feelings crystal clear. He wrote, "We are not friends, and we will never be after hearing how you treated Tamar on Sunday." He went on to say, "You never mentioned what you said to her, how you threatened her." Now, we need to be careful here because these were alleged text messages. But if authentic, they suggest that Vincent Herbert believed David Adefeso had done something far worse than just releasing medical information to the press. He was accusing David of threatening Tamar. This brings us to what happened next, the breakup and the legal battle. The relationship between Tamar and David fell apart quickly after her hospitalization. The exact timeline of when they officially broke up isn't entirely clear, but by September 2020, it was definitely over, and it was ugly. On September 8th, 2020, David Adefeso walked into the Stanley Mosque Courthouse in Los Angeles and filed a domestic violence restraining order against Tamar Braxton. In his filing, he made some serious allegations. He claimed that Tamar had punched him in the jugular while he was driving. He alleged that she had threatened to use a gun against him.
We gonna say that didn't happen. We gonna sit up here and say, after he was digging in between your thighs at that Roof Chris and he got up and went to the bathroom, that the conversation was, y'all, I can't. He just my friend. He just my friend. I can't. I mean, and then I said, Tamar, ain't he married? He ain't married. They not married. They just do that for the show. They not married.
And he claimed she had caused $30,000 in damage to his Rolls Royce. Let that sink in for a moment. The man who had been speaking to the press about Tamar's mental health treatment just weeks earlier was now in court claiming she had physically assaulted him and threatened him with a firearm. Tamar didn't take these accusations lying down. She countered with her own allegations, claiming that David was actually the aggressor in their relationship. She alleged that he had grabbed her and caused bruising. And here's the most disturbing part. She claimed he had threatened a murder-suicide. Tamar also took to Twitter to express her frustration. She wrote, "All I know is these dudes will manipulate you when they do some bulls, then act like it's your job to protect them when they all over you." She didn't name David directly in that tweet, but the timing made it clear who she was talking about, and fans picked up on it immediately. So what happened with David's restraining order? This is where the story takes an anticlimactic turn. The court date was set, the paperwork was filed, and then nothing. On March 2nd, 2021, the restraining order case was dismissed. The reason? Neither party showed up to court. That's right.
Hey, well, do what you got to do, girl. I'm not mad at it. Protect yourself at all costs.
You don't think that's a little extreme?
I mean, look, I will say that if you know that you are potentially could be exposed to something, you know, I can't tell you what to do and what not to do. I see people in the comments saying same.
You just wrap it up.
You can, but that is not foolproof. Listen, I've heard people say you'd rather be preventative than not worry about it at all. You know, sometimes we get vaccinated from things. We could say the same thing. So this is just something that's preventative. I'm not mad at it. For whatever reason she wants to do that.
After all the accusations, the public statements, the allegations of violence on both sides, nobody appeared for the hearing. The case simply went away. But the war of words wasn't quite over. Later in March 2021, Tamar publicly accused David of cheating on her. She claimed he had been unfaithful with, quote, his then assistant, now CFO Jessica, since 2019. David responded to this accusation by sending Tamar a cease and desist letter demanding she retract the statement. At that point, it seemed like both parties were ready to move on. But the damage to Tamar's privacy had already been done. Throughout this entire saga, fans were watching closely, and they had a lot to say. The reaction on social media was largely sympathetic to Tamar. On the Shade Room, Cora Jakes Coleman, who is the daughter of the famous Bishop T.D. Jakes, weighed in. She wrote, "David is not a victim. David is capitalizing on Tamar's life as he always has." Other fans said they had always sensed something was off about David. Some pointed to the 911 call and his media statements as evidence that he was more interested in controlling the narrative than in protecting Tamar's privacy during her most vulnerable moment. But here's where things got complicated. In 2022 at Essence Fest, Tamar and David were spotted together. The photos sparked immediate reconciliation rumors, and fans were not happy about it. Comments flooded in like, "Tamar say it ain't so." People criticized her for potentially reuniting with someone who had filed domestic violence allegations against her and who had aired her private medical information to the world. Others, however, defended Tamar's right to make her own choices. One commenter wrote, "That's why people should just stay out of situations like this." It was a reminder that no matter how much we think we know about celebrity relationships, we're only seeing what they choose to show us, and sometimes what gets leaked against their will. In the immediate aftermath of her hospitalization, Tamar did eventually speak for herself. On July 30th, 2020, she posted an emotional message on Instagram where she confirmed what had happened. She wrote, "It was only God's grace and His mercy on my attempt to end my pain and my life that I am here." She went on to describe feeling like she was existing for the purpose of a corporation's gain and ratings. This was a reference to her ongoing disputes with WETV over her reality show, Tamar Braxton, Get Your Life. She felt exploited and dehumanized by the network. But the most important part of her message was this: mental illness is real. We have to normalize acknowledging it and stop associating it with shame and humiliation. That statement marked a turning point for Tamar. The information about her mental health struggles had been released without her consent, but she chose to own it. She chose to use her platform to advocate for mental health awareness. In the years since 2020, Tamar Braxton has become an outspoken advocate for mental health awareness. She's been open about her journey in a way that's helped destigmatize conversations about depression and anxiety. On the 2025 season of The Braxtons, Tamar disclosed that she takes 20 milligrams of Lexapro for depression and anxiety. She also shared that she continues regular therapy. This level of openness is significant because it shows how far she's come since that night in July 2020. What was once information leaked without her permission has become part of her public advocacy. She's taken something that was done to her and transformed it into something she controls. That's a powerful form of reclaiming your narrative. So what can we learn from this whole situation? Because there are some important lessons here about privacy, consent, and what happens when personal information becomes public during a crisis. First, let's be clear about what actually happened. Despite what some headlines suggest, no formal medical documents were technically leaked in a legal sense. What happened was that David Adefeso disclosed Tamar's depression diagnosis, her medication status, and her treatment through a 911 call that became public and through media statements he made to outlets like The Blast. He did this without her authorization while she was hospitalized and unable to control the narrative. The Braxton family viewed this as a fundamental violation of privacy expectations. Even if it wasn't illegal, it felt like a betrayal. It felt like someone taking advantage of a crisis to position themselves in a certain way publicly. And this is something that happens more often than people realize. When someone is in a vulnerable situation, the people around them have enormous power over how that situation is portrayed. David Adefeso chose to speak publicly. He chose to release statements, and those choices had consequences that Tamar is still dealing with years later. As of now, Tamar Braxton is single and focused on raising her son, Logan, who is 12 years old. Interestingly, she and her ex-husband, Vincent Herbert, have found their way to a friendly co-parenting relationship. She even refers to him as Cousin Vince now, which shows how much their dynamic has evolved since the contentious divorce. There are no active legal proceedings between Tamar and David Adefeso. That chapter appears to be closed, at least in the legal sense. Vincent Herbert, meanwhile, has been dealing with his own financial and legal issues unrelated to this story. He's faced various lawsuits, including a $4 million judgment from Sony Music and other court matters involving jewelry. But as far as the David Adefeso situation goes, he's stayed out of the spotlight. When you look at this story from beginning to end, it's really about consent and boundaries. It's about what happens when someone shares your most personal information during your darkest moment. And it's about how you can take something that was done to hurt you and transform it into something that helps others. Tamar Braxton didn't choose to have her mental health struggles become public. That choice was made for her through a 911 call and press statements released while she was in the hospital. But she chose how to respond. She chose to be honest. She chose to advocate for others. And she chose to keep living and thriving. For fans who were stunned by this whole situation, the real shock wasn't just that private information was shared. It was watching in real time as a relationship that seemed loving turned into a bitter public battle, with accusations flying in both directions. It was seeing a family rally around their own while attacking someone they saw as a threat. And it was witnessing one woman's private pain become entertainment for millions. That's the story of Tamar Braxton and David Adefeso. Not an ex-husband leaking medical documents, but an ex-boyfriend making public statements during a crisis. The truth, as always, is more complicated than the headlines suggest. If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health issues, please reach out for help. As Tamar herself said, mental illness is real. We have to normalize acknowledging it and stop associating it with shame. Thank you for watching. If this video helped you understand this story better, drop a like and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories that matter. I'll see you in the next one.